I don't know what that option means or how they're going to decide how they're using them. And from what I've been able to find, we really just don't know. It is clear that the writing section is no longer going to be used starting in this fall. We do know that the NCAA, and I just read this I think yesterday or the day before, is still requiring students to have test scores to be a qualified athlete. It is my understanding from reading the information from the UCs that in order to be eligible within the local context, students still need to have a test score. And for California students going test blind in 23-24 for admissions, that will not include students who are looking again for eligibility guarantee or for scholarships. So what does this mean for us? When I read this, I feel like any one of my students who are applying to the UC still needs to take the SAT or the ACT. It's just not clear enough how their admission will be affected. Again, particularly with students who have pass-fail grades for the second semester of junior year. I think it's going to be really hard for students to figure out how to differentiate themselves without test scores. Now, if their test scores weren't going to be strong, then that's a good reason not to submit. But since we don't know how they're going to use submitted scores, this is very, very complicated and very confusing for parents and students to understand, and certainly confusing for us as counselors when we're trying to advise students. So I really hope in the next month, 2 months, we get a lot more clarity on what the UCs are actually doing. Those of us here in California, and I don't know what people are calling in from today, but you know, in California, I know almost all of my students will apply to the UCs. And if one school is requiring or needing test scores, then it obviously makes sense for them to test and potentially submit scores to all of their campuses.
And I also just want to add one more point to this slide, which is that a lot of this plan is based on the UCs trying to develop their own tests to replace the ACT and SAT. So the point that UC are becoming test optional until fall of 2024, one of their goals is to have a test developed before then. And so they're also saying that the option of submitting test scores might be using the UC's test if that exists, or submitting the SAT or ACT. And then by fall of 2025, if there is no if there is no UC admissions test that exists, then they will go fully test blind. That was my understanding of the article and the announcement. But again, a lot of this is about the attempt to replace the SAT and ACT with the UC's own test.
Yes, thank you, Meredith, for mentioning that. So the UCs are not saying that testing is not valuable. They're trying to come up with a test that they feel people in test prep can't, to prep students to improve their scores with instruction. My guess is whether it's a UC test, an ACT, or an SAT, we still know that students need to be able to read well, have good reading comprehension, to be able to do basic math. So whatever we want to call the test, and whoever is providing this test, my guess is it's going to have similar skills that they're going to be looking for from students. So we're going to keep an eye on this. We don't know, but this is something that we're watching, and something as a program that offers test prep. We're of course getting questions on constantly, and we're trying to keep up with all of this new information. Okay, so what's next? What are the students doing? You probably know in your own practice that a lot of kids are just postponing test prep altogether, because now the June tests have been canceled, and we're hearing that maybe the test will happen in September. So do they want to do test prep in May for 8 weeks and then take a break and come back? Do they want to do test prep continuously over the summer? We're finding in our practice almost no one is doing test prep. I mean, it's come to almost not 100% complete stop, but pretty close to the sort of wait and see attitude. A lot of our students have done quite a bit of test prep. They felt that they were really ready for tests this spring. They got very discouraged when they were canceled. They don't have the motivation right now to kind of keep that up. And we'll talk at the end about what we are doing at Marble Arch to sort of keep kids primed for testing when it happens, but also understanding that you know, it's really hard to prep for a test when you don't know when it's going to happen. Parents and students are really confused, as many of us are, about what all these testing changes actually mean for them. And as Margaret mentioned, this economic downturn, parents are just more conscious of what they're spending money on. So do they want to spend money on weekly or twice weekly test prep when they don't know when their student's actually going to test? Because usually kids want to keep doing test prep until right before the actual test. Well, that was in April, and then it was in May, and then it was in June, and then it was in July, and now we're in September, and parents aren't just going to keep writing checks when they don't know when those tests are actually going to take place. The other thing, of course, that we're experiencing in the test prep world is a change from physical offices and in-person meetings to working virtually. At Marble Arch, we've always had clients that have lived outside of our physical office area. So we have been doing virtual test prep for quite a long time, but it is a little bit of a switch for our students to be doing it, for all of our students to be doing it, and really having to really kind of rethink what our delivery model is. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But all of these things are happening, and so they're all happening at once. So as a business, we have to really pay attention to what these trends are, what the market is looking like, and how we're going to change our model somewhat to meet the demands of what the current economy is and the college admissions landscape. I think it's really important as a business, whether you're doing college counseling or whether you're doing test prep or whether you're doing both, that you be flexible in terms of your service delivery model. And I think you'll be more successful in the long run if you can be adaptable. I think that's just really important right now, more than it has been in the last few years. And Margaret mentioned that as well, about what this new economy is and what parents are going to be looking for. And it may be quite different than what they were looking for 2 years ago. So this comes down to sort of the business piece that I promised I would share with you, and a little bit about the history of how we got into test prep. As I said at the beginning, I swore I would never do test prep. I'm sure many of you have sworn that you would never do test prep also. Well, what happened was, I was referring people out into the community to really good service providers and people that I trusted and who I know did a good job. But I had a student in Australia one year, and I had referred him to a very large and very reputable test prep company, nothing wrong with what they did. But I found out afterwards that he had paid over $10,000 for test prep. And I was a little horrified by that. And that number just really stuck with me about what my student got for that $10,000 that he couldn't have gotten for much less, and sort of what was the message that they were giving him in terms of like how much test prep he needed to do and what was really necessary and what wasn't. So at the very beginning of my practice, because as I said, I did not want to do test prep, I found some partners who I trusted in my local community that I would bring into my office sort of as a subcontractor and invite my students to do test prep with them. I knew that they were reputable, they were pretty low cost, and we could kind of work in partnership in terms of the messaging that we were giving students about how much test prep was necessary. I did that for a few years, and then I was approached by a lot of other test prep companies who wanted to collaborate with me. And then in the end, I just really decided that the best way to offer test prep to my students was to have more control over the process rather than going through these sort of subcontracting arrangements. So I have a list here of what the pros and cons, and you can see what they are. And Meredith is going to chime in a little bit about what some of these issues are from the vantage point of the person who works with students both with college essay writing as well as doing the tutoring and test prep. And I should just mention too that our company does academic tutoring as well as test prep, but we are more heavy on the test prep side than we are on the academic tutoring side. So, of course, one of the reasons, a good reason as a business, is because you want to increase your source of income, and that was definitely a motivation for me. Also because, as you know, college counseling kind of comes and goes seasonally. There are months that it's pretty quiet, and there are months that you're really busy. I wanted a more even income flow, so I wanted to have another program that would bring in more revenue in the months in which college counseling was a little bit slower. As you know, May is usually pretty slow. December is usually pretty slow. July is pretty slow for college counseling, and those are times when people are often doing a lot of test prep. We also wanted to have a better understanding of students' learning styles. So when you're working with students, and Meredith's going to talk about this in just a moment, with test prep, we spend more time with them. We learn what kind of readers they are. We know how much they know in math. I have found over the years that looking at a student's transcript from some schools that we know have a lot of grade inflation is really not giving me enough information about what a student's academic background is. We were able to use our test prep program to understand some academic gaps that students have. And I think very important is that when we got involved with test prep, we were controlling the process and the messaging. Because when you have kids who are working with tutors who are not your partners out in the community, we've just seen, and I think this is how my student ended up spending $10,000 on test prep, being told that the goal is perfect scores. And for a B student, the goal probably is not perfect scores, that they need to take every subject test imaginable, that they need to be taking practice tests every weekend, I had a student whose parents refused to let her go visit colleges during spring break because the test prep company she was using told her she had to come in every day and do a full-length SAT practice test. I mean, it was just way too much. My students were getting really burnt out with the process that some of these companies were using. And the messaging again, and even the names of some of these companies, you know, the perfect score and photos on their websites of kids who got perfect scores, was really conveying a lot of, the messaging to the students was about perfection, about the kind of pressure and competition that I really didn't want my students to be hearing. That wasn't necessary. To have kids do well on standardized tests does not mean you have to just drill it into their brain and have them spend their life doing practice tests. We know that from our own practice that we can get really exceptional results by taking a different approach. Some of the cons. Before I go into the cons, I'm going to have Meredith just comment on the pros a little bit more about understanding academic gaps and students' learning styles. So I'll let Meredith talk about that for a few minutes, and then I'll go to some of the challenges with incorporating test prep into your program.
Sure. So I guess, like Dr. Stone was saying before, a transcript unfortunately has proven not very reliable in terms of understanding where a student is academically. A couple of years ago, I had a student who was a solid 3.0 GPA, and then when he took the ACT practice test, he was scoring in the 16th percentile of students in reading, which is obviously a very big difference, not what I was expecting. And so being able to see that is really helpful, and to being able to have conversations with the parents about what the student needs in order to be college ready. Those are really beneficial to have from on the test prep side. Additionally, you know, I'm a writing instructor with as the head tutor for Marble Arch. Our program actually splits students, so I work with students on the verbal sections, and then we have math specialists that work with students on those sections. So students are getting the tutor who really specializes in the area. So that's a little bit different in terms of our model. A lot of models work with having a student work with one tutor for all of the subjects. But because I am the verbal tutor and I get to work with students on grammar and writing, there is also an added benefit of getting them prepared to write a college essay because they are learning grammar. A lot of students, I think, really kind of lack a fundamental understanding of grammar. I think, you know, it's something that was, you know, kind of for a lot of students, it's something that's kind of reviewed in 5th grade, and then it doesn't really get retaught until later on. And so it really does provide a great opportunity for us to prepare them for the work that they're going to be doing in the college essay process, which has been really helpful for me. It's also helpful to learn, you know, which students, you know, how students work generally. Are students doing the homework that we assign from test prep? Are they not? Are students really, you know, obsessive about the score and are really, you know, perfectionists and kind of don't want to stop until every single answer is right? And so that does provide really good information in terms of moving forward with the college essay process and with the and with the admissions process of, you know, what type of student am I working with? I've developed a relationship with them already, and am able to anticipate better, you know, what parts of this process will be more stressful and what parts will be more easygoing. And I'm seeing a question: is there a clear sign when a student should not test? Yeah, so for the student who I mentioned, who, you know, was a 3.0 GPA, and then we found out that he had was the 16th percentile in reading. That's a student who like working with him, the testing, we were working on the test and we were working really hard and his scores were improving, but the amount of time and effort to put into the test itself would not have gotten him to a score that reflected his grades. For that student was not a particularly academically ambitious student. And so, you know, he was a student who, you know, was really happy to go, you know, to a CSU where they didn't require testing. And so, so that was the best option for him. But in that conversation, I had a conversation with the parents and said, you should know that this is the reading level of your student. We've taken a couple practice tests. It wasn't kind of just a one-off issue. And we kind of just hope, and in that case, like the parents were not particularly motivated for him to continue getting testing, just to work on his reading, or getting tutoring just to work on his reading. But in that particular case, it doesn't necessarily need to be test prep specific to keep working with a student, but it can be, or you can have a conversation with your parents about looking for more academic tutoring. So I'll pass back to you, Dr.
So again, that's the reason why I wanted to say too, we're test prep and tutoring, because sometimes the switch is to the tutoring in the process of test prep. And Meredith mentioned also, again, what our test prep process is we have math specialists and we have verbal specialists. And generally our students work with 2 tutors. They don't have to. All of our verbal tutors can teach math, and our math tutors can teach the verbal, but we want our students to get the best, and we know that our math people would rather not be doing the verbal parts. That's just not what their level of expertise is. They did well on the SAT themselves. They obviously know how to do it and teach it, but it's not where their specialty is. It's not what they're doing on a daily basis. So that's one of the models that we have. I think it's a little bit unique. So some of the cons, and I know there's a ton of questions here. I'm not looking at the questions while I'm presenting, so somebody else is chiming in. Mo, if there's a question that I should be answering right now. So let me tell you about some of the cons is. One, which happened this year, is in California, we could no longer hire people as independent contractors if they were doing a core service to our business. So we had independent contractors for many years. This year we had to make them employees, which costs, of course, our company more money, and put some restrictions on whether our test prep providers can work for other companies as well as ours. So that's a little bit more complicated. There are responsibilities for having employees, like you have to offer them sick leave, and you have to pay taxes for them, and there's just a lot more paperwork involved. There is some investment in materials, and I should do a shout out to Summit Test Prep, Summit Educational Group out of Boston that provides the materials for our program. We're very happy with them. There's more training required. There's more training required for me and for our employees. We are constantly upgrading our skills and paying attention to what is going on in the test prep world. You may get students who come to you who have already started test prep someplace else. And so it's not our model to try to lure kids away from good relationships that they have in the community, but we also offer everyone who comes into our program a free hour of test prep with one of our tutors and a practice test. And then if they so choose to switch tutors and join our program, we welcome that, but we don't, we try to, we're very respectful of the other colleagues in our community. And so we would love to have those students in our program, but if they already have a good relationship, we do respect that. Some of the test prep companies may not refer people to you for college counseling if they know that you also do test prep. So you may get some decreased referrals from your test prep community. And again, there's just additional bookkeeping, paperwork, parent communication. And I should say also that we primarily serve our college counseling students in our test prep program, but we do partner with a lot of other college counselors who send their students to us. We've never set out to be the next Kaplan or Princeton Review. That's never been our goal. But we do work with students who are getting college counseling elsewhere. And again, we have a different website, a different logo, a different name. It is a program of our Campanile program, but they are separate, so that if we're working with another college counselor student for test prep, we'd like to be in conversation with that counselor to know what the counselor's goals are, of where they'd like that student to be in terms of their readiness to take a test, but we're not doing any college advising with them. Okay, so let me move on to the next slide. Let's see if I can move on here. Are there any questions that I should be taking right now?
There was one question from Margaret. Does having the two companies, having two separate companies, provide some business protections? Because
it's one company. For Marble Arch is a program within Campanile. So it doesn't, I'm not sure what you mean by business protection. I mean, again, it's another source of revenue. So when one part of your business is in a slow season, the other part of your business may be in a higher season. It keeps that revenue a little bit more stable. So if that's something that's of concern to you as a business owner, not to have, depending on what your model is for your counseling program, that can really help the stability of your company. There's not, you know, again, having to hire people for, if test prep is a core program of your company, you can't use independent contractors in California anyway. I don't know what the laws are in other states. So that's a little bit more complicated, and that just happened this year. Okay, so we talked a little bit about messaging. This is a New Yorker cartoon I have on the wall in my office, which of course now my students don't get to see. They see this when they walk in. We want our students to know, and again, this is about messaging, that they can be a bright student and not have high test scores, that their test scores are not going to go with them to the grave. You know, they get very concerned and consumed with the you know, this feeling that they need to strive for perfection. We constantly reminding them they need scores that are good enough to meet their goals, but that doesn't mean that they're perfect scores. And some people are not great test takers, and we want them to know that they have lots of other skills and lots of other things that they're going to bring to an academic environment and a college is going to be interested in. So really important, the messaging. Again, if you're working with test prep within your own company or you're subcontracting with others, you want to make sure that the values of that company match your college counseling values. I think that's really, really important.
So we had one other question that was just about the option. If you had the option of using independent contractors, would you have preferred that?
Well, I started with the independent contractors. You don't make very much money doing that, or you make no money doing that. I did it to start because I wasn't quite ready to jump into hiring my own employees or my own independent contractors. And it was a good compromise that I had people in the community who actually came to my office and met with students in my office. They were not my employees. I paid them myself. I paid them. You know, I wasn't really, I wouldn't say I was making money off of doing that. I had a good relationship with them. I liked the messaging. I trusted them, and that was all good. I knew that my clients were not being overcharged, but I wasn't really controlling the process, and I wasn't getting to know the students. So those were some of the disadvantages. If you can find a partner that you can work with, and the extra income is not something that you need, you just want trusted partners, then that's a great way to go. It is certainly a lot easier. You know, I mean, to not have to be an expert in another area. It's definitely worthwhile to work with a partner. And we did that for a long time. And we might have continued doing that for a long time, but the partners that I trusted the most, when the SAT changed and became the quote new SAT, they no longer wanted to continue in the business. And so it was sort of a natural event that happened that our collaborators decided they didn't want to continue, and they kind of said, so do you want to just take this over for us in the community? And we said that was a good timing. It was just a nice transition.
I can also provide an answer just as a tutor. So as an independent contractor on our side, it means that we have the ability to theoretically go work and tutor outside of the program that we are being employed for. So if I wanted to do tutoring on my own and test prep, you know, and that I advertise and I find my own students, that I can do that, and I can also tutor with Marble Arch. So that's a benefit, but then the downside is that I don't get Social Security or other benefits that I get as an employee.
Right. So,
you know, and in this crisis with, you know, there are small businesses who have loans. If they have employees, then they are, you know, given the benefit of like the payment protection, you know, loans that small businesses are receiving. You wouldn't be getting that if you were an independent contractor. So from the tutor standpoint, I prefer being an employee more than an independent contractor because I know that I have those protections.
Yeah. So in California, we didn't have an option. We had to move everybody from independent contractors to employees. Meredith was already an employee because she was working in our whole program, but we had our other tutors were all independent contractors until this year. So that's an important consideration. And then what kinds of restrictions do you want to have on your employees about where else they can tutor? So that's something you have to work out with your tutors. A lot of test prep people, as you probably know, don't do this full time, and so they're looking for other kinds of work. So that's something you have to work out with them. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep going. I want to show you a clip of a video series that Marble Arch has is almost done producing. We're just a couple weeks away from officially launching it. As I mentioned earlier, we know that kids kind of stopped doing a lot of test prep. Most of the kids stopped, or they put it on hold over the summer. And so we wanted a way to provide lessons for our students in a virtual environment that were basically free to our students so that they would keep up their skills over the summer and come back to us again when they were ready to really dive in before the actual test was going to take place. So we've developed 22 video lessons with Meredith and with one of our math tutors, Matt. We're going to show you a clip of it today. We are going to be distributing this to our students over the summer. It's going to be available for other counselors to purchase to be able to distribute to their students as well. So I'm going to show you if I can figure out how to do this. So give me one moment because I have it up here and I have to figure it out here where that lies in my, not so good with this part. Hold on, I had it loaded up and now I don't know where it went. So let me just find it here. Here it is. Okay, I'm going to show you a quick video. Can you see my screen here, Meredith and everyone?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to just show you what we've been working on. And this is, again, I talked about adaptability at the beginning, that we all have to really think about what our market is right now and how we're going to provide services in this new environment that we're in. One for us remotely, for all of our students, not just some of our students. And again, knowing that our students are not going to be paying for, many of them or most of them, for individual test prep in the next couple of months, to keep them engaged with our program and to also have them not lose the skills that they've gained through the test prep we've already provided them. So I'm going to show you, this is 5 minutes long. I'm not going to show you the whole 5 minutes. I'm going to show you the beginning and the end, and you'll get a sense of what we're providing our students during this period. Okay?
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm a math tutor with Marble Arch Test Prep and Tutoring, and welcome to the question of the day. Today's question comes from the ACT, and it's a proportions question, which is a super important topic to have a firm grasp of for both the SAT and the ACT. Let's jump over to the whiteboard and figure it out together. All right. A building casts a shadow 40 feet long across a level football field. At the same time of day, a student standing on the field casts an 8-foot shadow. The student is 6 feet tall. What is the height in feet of the building? 5, 10 2/3, 30, 48, or 53 1/3. Go ahead and pause this video, see if you can work through this on your own. When you're ready, hit play and we'll walk through this together. Cool. So I've gone ahead and drawn up this situation with the student and the shadows and the building already for us and added in these quantities that we know. The whole linchpin to this question is realizing that we have similar triangles here and we can use...
I'm just going to fast forward and just kind of give you a sense of where he's going with this.
See in the student, we know that there are 8 feet of shadow. X, we divide by 8. Running out of space a little bit, but we get that 30 equals X. Now let's bring this up here because we're kind of out of space a little bit. 30 equals X. So that means that our height over here is 30. We can actually do a small check really quick and make sure that we're seeing this similarity in ratio. We can see that this 6 and 8, we can simplify that further if we take a 2 out and we get 3/4. Let's make sure we're seeing the same thing over here. 30 over 40, we can take a 10 out and we get 3/4. So this ratio of height to shadow length is the same in both. 30 is the correct value to get this 3/4 ratio. Therefore, it seems like our answer to the height of the building is 30. Let's go back and let's check. Let's go check our answers. It looks like C is 30. So in this case, our answer is C. All right, thank you for joining me for today's problem of the day. If you want some more practice, visit us at marble-arch.us, where you can learn more about our test prep and tutoring programs.
So I'm going to go back to, let's see, stop share. And I know that there's been lots of questions, and again, I haven't been looking at them. So Meredith, is someone moderating what the questions are before I kind of get to, I know we're kind of almost at the end.
Yeah, so we had one question on the Q&A, which was talking about virtual test prep versus having an office for test prep. And so, you know, for me, I love to work with students in person. Recently, we've, you know, not been able to do that. And also, you know, we've also had some students that we've worked with who don't live in the Bay Area, or even just with the logistics of traffic in the Bay Area, we're not able to come to our office in person. And so, you know, both are very possible. I think that with working with students virtually on test prep, it's definitely effective, and it just requires more prep and more creativity to make sure that the student is staying engaged. It's a little bit easier to kind of keep the student engaged when they're with you in person. You know, they're not distracted by the other tabs on their computer or by their phone or other things that are next to them. But it's certainly possible and it's certainly doable.
I'm gonna go back to
there's another one here. What are your effective ways of advertising or promotion for test prep? Do you have any ideas for that?
Go back to my slides here, sorry. The question was, what are the effective ways to promote your program? That was the question?
Advertising and promotion, yeah. Yep.
You know, we started off by offering a lot of free practice tests in the community. And doing free test reviews with students and giving them an opportunity to meet our tutors. You know, I mean, you could put out advertisements in high school newspapers, school papers. Usually those are digital now. And if you're incorporating it as part of your counseling program, you just advertise it in the same way you advertise your college counseling services.
I'm seeing questions about how to obtain these videos, and that there was the summit at the end. So could you explain more about the implementation? I think that covers all those questions. Sure.
So the videos will be available for purchase by college counselors in about 2 weeks. If you want to email me, I have on the last slide my email address, or if you want Margaret to forward your email to us, let her know. We'll provide you with information on ordering them. I don't know the exact price, they're going to be fairly low cost, and there'll be a set that you'll be able to share with your students. Summit is the provider of our test prep curriculum. We purchase their books for our students. We are using their sample questions in our video series. So that is why we have an acknowledgement of Summit at the end of the program, at the end of of each of the videos, because that is where our curriculum comes from. And they're an excellent program, and I highly recommend them if you're going to go venturing into doing test prep on your own, or if you're working with a partner. They have really great test prep materials that are available.
Is this something that would be like a DIY that I could offer students? Or is this something that you see more as a partnering with something else? What's the simplest way that I could use this, and then what's the, you know, like most entrenched, I suppose?
Well, I mean, if your students don't want to pay for test prep right now, but you want them to stay engaged in the process, you can provide the set of videos to the students along with the test prep books and see how well they can do working on their own. I've looked at lots of other videos on, you know, there's tons of videos on test prep out there. Khan Academy is out there, and a lot of other things that people use. I find them personally really confusing. And you have to get through, they offer so much, it's not specific to what our students are needing to work on. So I think our program is meant to be very simple, and it's not meant to be the videos are not meant to be comprehensive test prep. They're meant to be review and practice. And so if a student is able to go through test prep with books on their own and is motivated to do that, these videos provide support for students doing that until they have the ability to do test prep and the motivation to do it. And it's a supplement. It's not meant to, as I say, to be a comprehensive program. But I think that they're really valuable, and what's nice is that the student, we've designed them so that the students kind of, as Matt said in the video, pause and try to do it yourself and then go back and review. And because the students will have the videos, they can go back and review anytime. It's like, oh, I forgot how to do proportions. Let me go back and review that video one more time. And I think that's really helpful to students.
So I just wanted to also elaborate on the DIY aspect of keeping students engaged with test prep and education. So I think that, you know, we have like the Summit test prep curriculum, which is fantastic in terms of, you know, really getting you ready for the test and learning strategies about pacing and how to eliminate answer choices and things like that. But a lot of readiness for the test, you know, the readiness for the test can also very much be aided by, you know, just, you know, self-educating in the way that we all know how to do, by reading books, by watching really fantastic movies, seeing plays, all of those really wonderful things. And so I would encourage students, while they're not doing formal test prep and kind of that like passive test prep mode, you know, to find a book that they want to read over the summer, to keep track of the vocabulary that they don't know. A lot of questions on the SAT and ACT will test vocabulary, you know, and generally expanding your context. So for example, there was a student who I was working with who was prepping right before the March SAT, and then it got canceled. And we were looking at a reading passage together, and the reading passage was about Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And he had never heard of her before. He had no idea who she was. So, you know, that's something that, you know, if like reading a little bit or, you know, just kind of learning more, doing a little bit more of self-learning about history would give him a much greater advantage going into that reading passage when you know who she is as a historical figure. You know her politics, you know that she's a feminist, that she's a suffragette. And, you know, that would have given him a great advantage about going into the passage and understanding what it means. So it doesn't have to be a book. I'll just share my screen real quickly. Oh, I'm sorry, you have to stop your screen before I can share mine. So that you can take a screenshot, because I know that sometimes reading is very intimidating to students, but you know, movies are always great. And so one of the things that I just sent my students, just a little something for them was, you know, 8 movies for history class, 8 movies for English class, 8 movies just because they're really awesome movies. And, you know, keeping them engaged in that way so that they are learning on their own. So if people want to take a screenshot of this, they're welcome to, and I'll give them a moment for that.
Yeah, one of the things I think is really important, and this comes back to the messaging again, and Meredith, can you give me back the screen share?
Absolutely.
Our messaging in our test program is not just about learning tricks. It's about learning the content, and it's about being a better reader, and it's about understanding math concepts. So helping students to know that if you want to be a better reader on the SAT or the ACT, you need to read. So we encourage book reading all throughout the year with all of our students. And you know, we always say, you know, you don't need tricks if you know how to read. You know, you don't need to have to eliminate the worst answer. I mean, it's not that we don't teach kids strategies for test taking, of course that we do, but the better readers they are and the more well-read they are, the less they get caught up, as Meredith said, on a reading passage where they don't recognize somebody's name. And then that just gets them distracted from you know, reading through the passage and coming to an answer. So that's part of the messaging of what we do in our program. And we always think of ourselves as teachers first. We want to teach kids to be better readers, and we want to teach them how to understand basic math. And then the high scores on the test are a result of them being better readers and better at math. It's not a means to its end to have a high test score. We're trying to prepare students to be successful in college. And that's the approach that we take with all of our students. So I think you saw I love the way Matt taught that proportions in that proportions video, because I looked at that question, I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot how to do that. Could not remember at all. But he explained it in such a simple way. It didn't seem so as intimidating to me. And I'm not someone whose math is my strong suit. So that was really helpful to me. And just taking the time and go through things really clearly so that you really understand how you solve a problem, rather than just kind of trying to figure out what trick it is that you would use. Margaret, I don't think we have much time. Do you want to? Are there some other questions that we should be?
I received a question here that I thought was very funny, and something that was kind of in the back of my mind too was, do I need to be studying? Do I need to be refreshing myself on these issues? Or
That's a great question.
My students are coming in with 1600s and 36s, and we're not going to talk about my scores?
we're not going to talk about my scores either. I'm not the person who provides the test prep. I'll be really clear on that. I hire really amazing people who do a great job. I don't try to teach math to my students. I would not be successful at it. That's not my strength. I think it's really important if you work in the test prep industry, if you start this as part of your program, you know what your own strengths and weaknesses are, and you find partners who can be an asset to your business model. It's not my strength. I'm good at running programs. I'm good at finding really excellent teachers, and I'm good at keeping up on what the latest trends are. And I make sure that my test prep employees know what those are, and I provide them with constant professional development. And that's my role. That's a great question. I probably should have basic math, but
well, I will say that if you are curious about studying, another shout out for Summit Test Prep curriculum. I think that it is just really well designed, and I like, for me, it was a really wonderful training tool to become more acquainted with the tests and more acquainted with the concepts that are on it. And so reading through the book, I think will definitely provide anyone a lot more information about how the test is structured and about the content on it.
And let me just mention one other thing. If you're hiring people to do test prep in your program, you don't want to just hire people who are good test takers. They have to be good teachers. So there's a difference between someone who can score well on a test that they took themselves and someone who knows how to teach somebody else how to do it. And so, you need to find that combination of people who are patient and know how to explain things in multiple ways. And I think one of the strengths of our program as well is we work with lots and lots of students with learning differences. And we're able to adapt because our program is one-on-one. It's very clear. And again, we're not just teaching tricks, we're teaching concepts. And so our program has worked really well with kids of all different learning styles. And our teachers are excellent working with kids who are quick to get concepts and kids who need a lot of review.
And we are a diverse group as well. And we have different modes of teaching. And so we also, for students who, are, super energetic and, are kind of like the really, really go, they might be working with, tutor A, versus if they really want, that slow, very calm teacher, they might be working with tutor B. And so having a diverse panel of teachers in terms of energies and teaching styles is also beneficial, I think, for a test prep and tutoring practice.
So I know Margaret probably wants us to stop talking. We could talk for a long time. So if you'd like to keep talking to Meredith and myself, we are very excited. We do have some upcoming workshops that actually start Saturday and Sunday this weekend. If you go to this website that's posted here, you'll see them. Meredith is doing 2 hour and 15-minute interactive. These are interactive. They're not just PowerPoints. We're doing breakout groups and we're doing activities on essay writing. One of our other employees, Doria Charlson, who teaches at Brown, is doing a session on preparing students for interviews. And then I'm doing 2 mentoring groups for counselors who would like to meet in a small group 3 times and just talk about whatever it is that's on your mind and share insights and strategies with some colleagues and just increase your peer group. So I'm very excited about that. It's not too late to register. Please go to the website that's on the screen and join us. We made them really low cost. We're just wanting to get to know more of you in the community and share some of our experiences with all of you and learn from you as well. So please do join us.
Thank you so much for this. This was candid and I love the overview. We have many questions that are coming in that we are not able to get to, but I will put these questions together and I will send them to both of our amazing panelists so that they can get you some answers back. I would like to know more about how I integrate these videos, so I will ask that those questions are answered as well, and then this will be posted on our website soon. The link that was just on that slide is now in chat, so if you look in chat and just double click that link right now, you'll be able to be taken directly to the site. Okay, so next week.
You know what, Margaret, it looks like I got an extra period in here. I'm sorry. Can you remove that?
Oh, but it's on the chat. So there's a correct version that's on the chat that people can copy and paste into their browsers.
Yeah, so just take out that extra period here. Sorry about that.
That's all right. That wasn't hot, and Meredith took care of that.
Oh, thank you. Well, we would love to see you in the coming weeks in some of our workshops. We so enjoy learning from all of you. And, you know, I just want to emphasize that what works in my practice is not necessarily what I am saying should or must work for you in your practice. We all work with different populations. We have different skill sets. My suggestion and my takeaway for you today is just to think about what's the best way for you to adapt your programs in the light of what we're living in right now, so that you can continue to be successful in your program and serve your families. And that's, I think, what we're all trying to do. And today that was an example of what we're doing in our program. And we wish you all the best. And thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to have you on this call. Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you again. Thank you again. And we hope to see you all next week.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you for having us.